Hey all, it's Paul from Drums and Rums with the Backbeats Meets the Spirits. This episode is sponsored by Club Tiki. Visit them at clubtikico.com to order rum-based cocktails in a can. Use promo code Drums and Rums to receive a discount, and if you order 4 packs or more, you'll get free shipping. They can the tropics so you don't have to.
All having once upon a bottle of rum.
Hey all, it's Paul from Drums and Rums with the Backbeats Meets the Spirits, episode 105. I've got a great guest today. I want to introduce a fellow podcaster who I don't want to give too much away, but we are going to get into all this here in a second. I want to go ahead. So when you think of, what is a hook in bridge? Well, in the sense of music, a hook is a musical idea, often on a short riff, passage, or a phrase that is used in popular music to make a song appealing to catch the ear of the listener. And a bridge is a section of a song that's intended to provide a contrast to the rest of the composition. From the Beatles to Coldplay, Iron Maiden, songwriters use these bridges to change moods and keep the audience on their toes. I learned about our guest through our podcasting company, Buzzsprout, and wanted to know more about them. Welcome to the podcast, host of the Hook and Bridge podcast, Harley Cornell. How you doing, Harley?
What's up, man? It's awesome to be here. I'm so excited.
Yeah. No, I'm glad we got a chance to meet, connect, and it's always interesting how the world, as I've said many times on a podcast, the internet is a great thing, and unfortunately, it's not the greatest things as well. But there are some good things that are out there when it comes to meeting people and learning about things. So very very cool. So before we talk about the podcast, what I'm interested, got a lot of things I want to talk to you about is, obviously there's a music reference here, and that what I read there was a description. Yes, I did take it straight from Wikipedia. So don't go ahead and start everybody claiming and I'm stealing stuff and all that. Yes, I borrowed it. Right, it's all fair use, right? As long as you send them a couple bucks a month, like they're always asking for when you log on to Wikipedia, right? So, how'd you get into music? Let's start there because I know there's obviously this is the foundation of the podcast, which we're going to really dig into. I want to talk to you about, but obviously music is there's a huge music influence and tie here into it. So, how'd you get into music?
So I actually started playing the guitar at 13. I was a self-taught musician. I was handed a first act acoustic guitar for Christmas one year. A lot of musicians have like this really amazing, passionate story of like, it was a way to express myself, this and that. I was 13. I was playing Guitar Hero, and I was like, you know what? I bet I could do this for real. And I just took the time and learned it, and I loved it so much, and that passion developed later. So I started taking things serious about 15. Started my own band, started performing at high school in like talent shows, and started going to different cities to their shows, and just developed it from there, man, and built a small career out of it.
Very good. So Guitar Hero got you started, the interest. That's I had a guest in the first season and back in very early on the podcast, and I met him at a drum workshop that I attended in Nashville, and his background, his story was how he got into playing drums was through Guitar Hero or Rock Band or whichever one had the drums. Right? I think they both did actually, and I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. So I think that's a heck. You could have this show idea if you want is just to talk about people that that got into playing music or instruments just because the influence from video games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So. Hell, there's even a reference, a South Park reference. There's a whole South Park episode about them, becoming rock stars at the bowling alley. Rocking out.
Yeah.
Plug for South Park.
I mean, the cool thing about music is like it doesn't matter where you come from. Once you get started, you realize that you do have a message and you have something that you want to say, even if you didn't realize it when you started. And that's kind of where that passion developed. Is I did end up using it as this outlet of just trying to get like my feelings out into the open. I was a very quiet, kind of sheltered child. I was really goofy, real awkward looking. I was never a star athlete. Hung out with like the stoner crew, so you know, I never really fit in, and it was kind of my way of expressing that feeling, and that's where my love for songwriting came from. That's like how I got into really developing a message and a craft.
Right. It's interesting that how kids, teenagers, how people come up through music, and like you said there, they use it to kind of get their emotions out, try to help figure things out, or some people have diaries, some people write poems, some people write, just kind of there's a creative aspect of it, and
Mhm.
I don't want to say and generalize that is it lost, with all the discussion, and we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of big hot topics that are in the news right now, but there's is there something there that music or that outward expression is not. I don't know. I was gonna, like I said, I'm trying not to generalize. Say, is it lost or is it not there anymore? Is it lost its luster? For kids that are trying to figure things out, may not fit in, like or whatnot. Is they turn to music and they really find something that they can become a part of and be very creative about too.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I know. So, but in this case here, right? Yeah, we went from video games to to music and hell, I mean, I know your recent podcast, and like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about the podcast here in a second. Was one of the episodes you guys were talking about was, and to be honest, I didn't even know who Kate Bush was. And you guys were talking about Stranger Things. I have not seen even a Stranger Things episode. I'm like in a under a rock when it comes to certain shows, and it's like,
Right.
hell, I haven't. We be honest, and people won't believe this, but I have never really. I may have seen occasionally a glimpse of a Breaking Bad episode. I never really watched Breaking Bad. Never got into that. So I never got into Stranger Things. It's just like, I don't know. I got no time for this. I'm doing podcast work by myself, like we were just talking about before the show, right? It's all me. But yeah, that was but that rock band stuff is exposed people or kids in a whole generation. That's a very kind of, my point is very cool where generational stuff comes back around. Whether it was, for me, everyone talked about kids wearing the bell bottoms when when I was in high school, and they're like, bell bottoms, that was like the 70s or whatever the fad was back 20 years earlier. Things do come back as retro, and it's or when you, I don't know if you have kids, but like when kids like all of a sudden they're like, oh, have you ever heard of this band? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, like, or some is, I tell people, it's like, I was 18 in 92, and but the summer of 91 I saw the original Alice in Chains at Madison Square Garden. So
Lane Staley, man, what a beast.
Yep. So, but anyway, so yeah, I think it's a cool thing that rock band, rock hero, it's an opportunity for music or musicians, hell, a new avenue stream to make money, right? Because nowadays, I guess it's okay to sell out, as back in the day, letting your song be used in a commercial was selling out, right? But now it's okay because everybody needs money. Nobody cares anymore about what selling out is.
Well, and I think that also boils back down to how 30 years ago, musicians, how they were paid. The structure has just changed so much that you have so much control now over your art and your copyrights and everything. So these record labels aren't really involved as much as they used to be. So now it's not seen as a bad thing to sell out, because like you're earning all of your money. You're not giving it to somebody else.
Right.
So
yeah, and I think that's the plus. Well, it depends on what side of this you're on. The plus of the internet is the ability to stream and control your content, put it out there, monetize it. The one thing though is, from what I understand, is for songwriters or musicians is the payment from streaming versus radio airplay.
Right.
There's a big difference between what your cut is between two. And actually, I was just reading an article about how Spotify thinks that a few Canadian artists are going to lose their download or listens or streams because Canada's got some law that's trying to balance out, I guess, music and sort of. I know, but look it up anyway. Anyway, so forth. So that got you into music. And then he said that kind of led into some of the playing guitar or writing songs. So are you still? So where are you at? Are you still doing songwriting? Are you still actively doing music or?
So I took a little bit of a hiatus. I moved to Virginia. And from there, just really didn't have the time to get out there. And that's the thing with music is when you don't have the time to dedicate to it, you put yourself in this real depressive slump, to a point where I have a built-in studio and I didn't go in it for over a year because I felt that there was no point in putting the effort and the time in if I couldn't share that with anybody outside of these four walls. So, I just kind of stopped for a little bit, and I never stopped writing songs. I have 3 notebooks filled with songs, but I just kind of stopped having that urge to play out in front of people. So that's why I've kind of started getting into podcasting, was because it's still a way to be involved in the industry without the pressure of developing a 3-hour set list and making sure I show up at open mics 3 days a week. And, it's just easier
it's a grind,
to get
right?
it out.
Yeah,
man. It's life gets in the way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's, as we were talking there before the podcast, and you're right. Likewise, you have friends that are musicians that are doing it. It's as much as it, I'm here in South Florida, and I've got some good friends, and I say this, and all kidding aside, is there's times that some of my friends are posting pictures while they're in between sets at the tiki bar by the water, and it's like, yeah, your office view is a lot better looking than my office view, and it's like tough life, but that's something they're passionate they have to do, and so forth, and I think that's really important, that you kind of hey, things change, ebbs and flows. You kind of switch up. Who knows? The podcast may lead into something else, or kind of sparks a new interest, or some new collaborations, etc. And but yeah, it's okay to every now and then to take those necessary breaks, because then when you come back to it, I'm sure you come back to it with a vengeance, because
exactly.
Right, there's so much built up there. So.
And
Cool.
plus, like, it's such a young person game. Like, I'm an old soul. I'm gonna be 28 here in a couple months, and there's just something about being out past midnight just seems unappealing. Like, I want to be asleep by midnight.
Wow,
So,
you definitely are. You definitely are an old soul, right? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's the set. The times have changed. Kid. And I say this in the most affectionate way, right? Kids today, right? And again, to you, there is an age difference, a pretty decent age. Probably, I'll go out and just say, since you shared your age, I'll say there's close to about a 20-year age difference there. So
yeah, there you go.
There you go. So yeah, you're right. There's times when it's like it's not all it's cracked up to be sometimes. And I don't know. I get you because yeah, when you're a gigging musician, you're there to perform. You're not there necessarily to have fun. It can be fun. But at the end of the night, you're breaking all that shit down, packing everything up. Now it's a long drive from wherever you're at, and but yeah, I get it. It's that's why the internet's such a great thing, because you then can parlay some of this into other content to get your information out there without hell. I mean, look at the Beatles. The Beatles stopped performing, at a certain point, and they just put records out, and now again,
Right.
They were so big that they were able to do that, and so on. But cool. So the podcast. So Hook and Bridge podcast is you and your sister, right?
Yes. Yep.
So
The only brother and sister music podcast in the world.
okay, so I'm going to take your word for it. I'm not going to fact check you. I'm assuming. I'm sure assuming you know what you're talking about. And so yeah, so I had so this podcast is it's it's a creative music podcast. You guys talk about music, song. It sounds like you're just talking, and having a general good time and conversation about the central point of the music right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so basically the concept of the show is just a couple of friends hanging out, talking music, man. We love to break down like top 10 lists, have people involved in the music industry on as guests, interview them, get their insights on different things. And then we always try and cover any local music news or national music news in the beginning, just to kind of keep everybody up to date with what's going on in the industry,
Right. So what got you into doing podcasts? I think you mentioned a little bit about it but I mean, I guess what was oh, hey, I've got an idea, or, or did, your sister, or I guess what was the genesis of all that?
So if you bounce it back to the beginning, I'm a huge comedy fan. There's a show on SiriusXM called The Bonfire that is my biggest inspiration for my show. I listen to them every week and thought to myself, these guys are doing a great thing and I'm very passionate. So I'd like to get into a little bit of broadcasting. Our original idea was Pokemon related. So we did have a Pokemon podcast that did 3 episodes. Schedules got in the way. Everybody bailed on me. Took about 6 months to a year and said, what else can I do? I want to get something out into the world. And I have this passion for music. So my little sister is also a musician. She's a college musician. She plays trumpet in Hiram University. So I just contacted her one day and said, hey, I have this idea. What do you think? And she was like, I love it. This sounds great. It sounds fun. So we developed the idea and didn't really have a name at the time. And over time, I kind of thought about our contrast as brother and sister. And it reminded me of like a hook and a bridge in a song, like 2 different personalities, 2 different intakes, 2 different knowledge bases, but they work great together and you're essential to the piece. So we like to say that I'm the hook, she's the bridge, and then my wife is the and in the middle.
So so your wife is in all the episodes or here and there?
She is in all except for the one that's coming out this Monday, our episode number 7. She chose to go and hang out with some friends that day. So she's not going to be in this upcoming one, but she is an essential part to our show. She's my executive producer, both in the show and in life. So she's what keeps me on the straight and narrow and make sure that we keep ourselves flowing the way that we need to.
I think you just gave all wives a new name to go by. They are the executive producers of this household or this
That's
family.
damn right.
There you go. So there you go. That I'll have to mention that one to my wife. She'll probably like that. So, no, cool. Yeah, and like I said, it's having a core group of people that are part of the show and what you're doing, the creativity and ideas. Like I said, there's 3 of you to kind of bounce things off of each other and help with some of that the content workload and so forth, which definitely is very helpful. So you started. So you mentioned episode 7. So you see this just started in June, right? So it's a weekly podcast. And where can we listen to the podcast?
So we are exclusive on Amazon Music and Spotify. There are some other sites out there that you can listen to. Buzzsprout has an embedded player, so I have noticed some fluctuation on there as well. People seem to be using Buzzsprout now as well. But the majority of our listens come from Spotify, and it's a great place to listen. You can throw us a review on there, or not a review, I guess a rating.
Right.
So that's where I push everybody, and we're working on the YouTube page as well, trying to develop some video elements of our show and putting them up there. So we'll be doing that here soon as well.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, I find with for mine, it's when I don't share a lot of times directly the buzz spread. Occasionally I will send the guest that came on or other people that are close to the podcast that listen
Mhm.
hey, you want a sneak peek of this one, or hey, you want give this a little listen, or give me some feedback, or how does it? Because for me, and I don't know how much time you put into your editing process post. Is it just hit record and you're pretty much good at levels, or do you do a whole lot of post on the show?
I do a ton of editing. I have found that doing a podcast requires a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
And especially coming from a music background and an audio background,
so you're very particular.
editing. Yeah, editing takes me a while. So
yeah, and I've been told by a producer friend who has a home recording studio and records local bands, and he said something interesting was, you can only go for so long in listening, especially when you're doing, either it's recording or editing, that then you do suffer from, most people probably wouldn't believe this is a thing, ear fatigue,
Mhm.
and I find that there's times when if I'm sitting there editing or trying to, do a little, hopefully I don't think this is a surprise to the listeners, is I do a little bit of cleaning up, obviously trying to compress or normalize levels, try to sometimes take out if there's a little bit excessive ums and so forth, because I try to think about two places that most people are listening to podcasts is in their AirPods or their earbuds or whatnot, and obviously the sound levels, and how can
Mhm.
it's something that could be annoying if you're listening to it, that close to your ear, and also in the car. I think you can get away a little bit, but
Right.
the levels have to still be good because obviously there's a lot of road noise. So, I do kind of, there's times that I, may let it go, and then there's other times but yeah, the ear fatigue and the listening. So I mean, it's good that yeah, there's a little bit of effort put into, so folks know, hey, it's not always going to be recorded perfect, but just like recording a song, and
Oh
that
yeah.
gets put out to streaming or a studio with a quality that you want, the best quality that you can put forward.
I will say the biggest difference between a song recording and a podcast recording is, in my experience, recording a song, I can go back and re-record my vocals probably 50 times, and then pick through which one I like best. With a podcast, it's like, all right, we hit the button, let's go.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There's no redos.
Hey, can we recap? Can we redo that whole hour conversation we just had? Right?
Yeah.
You're like, you lost, but that's just it. It's in the moment, right? It's in,
Yeah.
it's you lost. You probably could, but it just, you wouldn't capture some of those other things that you may have captured, obviously, the first time.
It's really funny too in real life. Like I talk to my sister every single day, and obviously I talk to my wife every day too. So we'll be talking about something, and I'm like, no, save it. Don't say anymore. We'll talk about it in a couple days.
Right. Yeah. That's always hard, is because, listening to shows like either radio shows or whether it's on terrestrial radio or on satellite, is like Howard Stern. You're like, it almost seems like they never talk to each other. And again, that's what you want, the spontaneity of a actual genuine comment. Oh, what did you do this week? And you're actually telling me for the first time, and rather than it being forced, maybe they do, and they just do a good job at, making it come off like, they don't talk to each other, right? Which is odd, right? You spend all that time. Well, I don't know. Again, it's like music. You wouldn't think it's a job, it's your career, it's your profession, etc. But I don't talk to people that I work with on the weekends, right? So
Yeah. Yep.
unless it's something work related does come up, but yeah. So I get it. So there should be no difference when people think about it. There should be no treated in no different sense, though. So yeah. So as you mentioned the name of the podcast, I think it was once I kind of dug a little bit into try to Google and Facebook stalk, and try to find out more about you and all that. I definitely now it makes sense, right? And obviously the the name of the podcast. So which is really kind of a cool concept. And I don't know if you maybe have an episode or even hell, even spin off another podcast where it's you talk about songwriting, right? And and maybe do one. I don't know. So just throwing some ideas out there.
So it's not official yet. So you'll be getting the big scoop here. But our episode that's coming up, we interviewed a man named Avi Blum, fantastic guy. If you get a chance, check him out on YouTube. He's very, very interesting fella. But we are talking about doing a mini series where him and I are actually going to go through and write a song together and explain to the audience from start to finish how that's done. So nothing's official, but it should be coming, I'd say, in August or September.
Cool. No, that's really neat, because it's when people listen to a song or follow a musician, they always like, well, what was the song? What was the song about? What was the story? Or how did they get these words or whatnot? And then the process, right? In the last episode that we had on with Renee Rivera, him and I were talking a little bit about their process and his band Loch Ness Monster and what they went through in the recording studio. And I asked, I said, you guys go in and you've got your shit together. You're in there to take care of business, and you're not screwing around and you're taking forever, because time is money in their sense, right? I said, but if money wasn't an issue, hell, look at the Beatles. They went in and just basically wrote on material for 2 weeks, and cranked out. Again, now they can afford it. Was their studio, right? But they could afford to sit in there. But just it's kind of interesting to watch that process and to go through. So,
yeah, I think I could be misremembering this, but I believe that Paul McCartney actually said in an interview once, like, they wouldn't have been able to afford to record at their studio. So it lucked out that they owned the property.
Yeah, right.
Owned the business. But I always found that interesting to have a business model that you yourself can't afford to go to.
Right. Yeah. And that's a fair point. I mean, yeah, they were huge at the time and had money. But again, I think never in our wildest dreams to reach the point of the money that especially Paul McCartney has, today, just from all that songwriting stuff. So everything on the podcast there is, some of your topics, as you said, interviews, you talk about music. So it's all about current events. Talk a little bit about the process, how you come up for an episode. Do you guys sit down together? Do you got to brainstorm? Dig for whatever the current news is, or you talk a little bit about how you kind of put an episode together.
Sure. So the cool thing about doing a podcast is you have such a huge community of people that have done very well, that work really well. It's like the opposite of being in music. Like, from my experience as a musician, everyone's against each other because nobody wants the other person to be more successful than them. Where in a podcast, everybody's like, please do what I've done. Let's all grow as a community.
Right.
So the big takeaway that I had from one of the tips that Buzzsprout had listed was have a structure, So I sat down and I said, okay, what is our show? What is our audience? And we have a set structure every week. We check the latest news. We go through that. And then we have either an interview or a top 10 list that we break down, followed by each one of our guests comes on and brings a song that they want to break down. And we break down a song with them. Or if there is no guest, we do a fun game. So, we sat down and created our own game, as you can see behind me, the What Is That Music game. It's a fun game that we made up. It's nothing like Jeopardy, even though it's Jeopardy. And we just play a little game for 20 minutes. It's everybody loves to have trivia night, right? You love just sharing your knowledge. So we really love doing that on the show. And then we just do our closing time segment where we just close out the show and do all of our plugs.
All right. So I'm going to give you an idea here, and they said you're right, because I've got a question I want to ask you. I'm going to come back to it about the Buzzsprout and some of the the tips and things, the community, right? But before, because I know I'm going to forget, right? I'm going to be on ADHD here. But you're talking about the music there and the trivia and the games. Maybe you guys should think about. I know you don't want to do the whole gigging thing and so forth, but I had done an episode recently at a local wine and charcuterie place here in town, and the owner was again trying to spark up a slow night or one of the and something different. And as I mentioned, a fellow podcaster, local podcaster, Brad Brock, and I had done an episode. We had a couple hours there, and it was basically the concept is just come up and tell your story, and we're gonna do a live podcast. You record it. Hey, you're in the audience. You come up, share a story, get a free drink. It's kind of like an open mic for podcasts, right?
Yeah.
And but maybe that's something that if you got something there in your town that you're frequent enough that maybe you can try to pull off a podcast night where you host like a little bit of music, a little bit of podcast stuff going on there. And I don't know. I'm just kind of just throwing out there, no pressure.
I really like it. I really like it, Paul. That's a good one.
There you go. Yeah, you can. I see you're going. You can have that, right? Yeah. So there you go. You can start this up in Virginia. But again, it's something different, right? And then I know some folks may not get the concept at first, but it's interactive, right? And it depends on what the location is, right? You're not going to go into some 5-star restaurant and do a whole podcast to get people to step away from the the fine china and all that. But some place that's kind of open and and willing, and again. During the pandemic, a lot of restaurants that were still trying to keep going forward, and I know quarantine and social distancing, et cetera, was difficult. But there's a lot of times that there's places that are willing to try something new. And again, as you mentioned, right, performing, you know what, you can be the shittiest musicians and band, but if you got a crew that follows you that drink, you're going to be like mega superstar getting all those shows, right? It sucks to say it that way. But it's the truth, right? But I don't know.
Yeah, I love that idea, man. I'm probably gonna steal that one.
There you go. I run with it, man. Keep me posted on it. I'll keep track. So for sure, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to have you drive up from Florida and come sit in, man.
Yeah, you know how far of a drive that is.
I do.
Yeah, I like but yeah, it's a long drive. Yeah. Oh, too funny. Actually, we have I got a good friends up there in the Richmond area who are part of
there you go.
Richmond Rum Society. There's a local rum group that's in Virginia, or is it Virginia? Richmond? I can't remember. I think it's Richmond. But most of them are located in Richmond, and they get together. Very much similar here in Florida. We've got a Florida Rum Society. There's folks, rum enthusiasts from all over Florida. They get together, events, virtual happy hours, etc. But yeah, there's quite a few that are up there. So, and yeah, actually, how far is Richmond from where you're at?
Like an hour and 30 minutes.
Okay.
Not too far.
Yeah. So our past guest, Greg Hill was on, and he's a musician. Also, he still performs every so often, and he plays bass. And so I don't know, maybe connect you guys and kind of whip up some type of crazy podcast music jam night thing or whatever. So there, check it out at your nearest IHOP coming soon. Hook and Bridge live trivia night. So
live, I love it.
So yeah, back to talking about the show, the structure, the process. Yeah, you're right. It's so important, I think, for folks that are, if they're listening or thinking about starting a podcast, or those that are. It's to keep you sane and to keep you straight and to make it not kill you is important to be very organized and structured as much as it, and it's like this, right? I've got some notes here that I'm just reviewing through, talking through the conversation. I try to keep it at least somewhat spontaneous as possible, but at least there's make sure I'm not going all over the place. And as well as the questionnaire, right? The show question. That was a huge thing for me, putting that together. And very similar, right? I kind of leveraged and borrowed from, another podcaster, and very similar kind of topics there. And say, hey, instead of me trying to find out all this information about the guest, why don't you tell me what you want to talk about? or at least give me some
Right.
background, or at least help me out here. And that's been a big plus. Just so again, being pretty much a solo thing here for me, it's like I don't have infinite amount of time to be, so I need to maximize my time as best as possible. So, but yeah, the Buzzsprout community there on Facebook, great group. If folks are thinking about checking out a podcast to start, check out Buzzsprout on Facebook group, or a lot of great folks asking questions, equipment questions, gear, or settings, or what software to use, or and so forth. And again, a lot of folks actually connect, because a lot of folks have very similar minded shows to kind of cross promote, which I think that's a huge thing, that if people aren't doing that, they should, because it definitely helps cross your audiences and vice versa. So,
Yeah.
so cool. So this last episode that you guys did there, right? Okay. So the last episode there was the top 4th of July party songs. Listen, that was a terrible list. Okay.
It was horrible.
Okay. And for those that you haven't listened to the last podcast here with Harley, the Hook and Bridge podcast there, right? Okay. In disclaimer, I said it's a terrible list. It wasn't. I'm not slamming him. It wasn't his list. Okay, let's make sure I'm not. People's like, man, you're so harsh on your guest here. No, it wasn't his list, right? Where did you find the list from?
So this was actually on the Songwriters of America website. So I don't know where they got their information from. It was kind of satire. You know what I mean? I chose the list because of it being so bad. And if you listen to the episode, I take each song and give like a little background story of being at a barbecue, building up that satire and just how insanely ridiculous this. It had nothing to do with the 4th of July. I don't know where they got it.
Yeah, you speaking. Listen to the whole episode there. So check that out. The 4th of July episode that dropped on the 4th, right? I think it dropped.
Yeah,
on
it dropped
Monday.
right on the 4th, man. That morning.
So yeah, definitely you need to have. Was that your uncle with the motorcycle and the stereo? Was that you need to have him on? Right? Yeah,
the most expensive radio.
There you go. Yeah, that's got to be that'll be a great episode. I'm sure. He sounds like an interesting person. I don't want to say character because people make it offensive by that word, right? What do you mean I'm a character? But yeah, so that list was. So I thought about the list. I said, and I'm listening to it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But then I thought a little bit more. I was like, all right. I think when people would hear the sense right on the surface, 4th of July party songs, that it doesn't mean that it was necessarily anything to do with 4th of July, America, or anything like that. There were a couple, right? But there was just like you said, you're exactly right. It was like the backyard barbecue. People are just listening to music. And this is the music that's going to come on and get the crowd going. And kind of, yeah. So it may not be, Sweet Caroline is not a Independence Day. There's nothing in the, maybe unless I'm missing something in the meaning of Sweet Caroline. But yeah, it's not necessary.
I will say, so Sweet Caroline is a song that I performed in show choir as a group. We performed it, and not a song has ever been played anywhere that literally will stop a crowd. Like,
oh yeah,
if you just start it anywhere in the world, people just stop and they wait.
Yep, they know the build up to it, right?
So if you ever get a chance, if you want to do something hysterical at a party, start Sweet Caroline. As soon as it hits to the spot where they're going to sing, skip to the next song. You will cause mayhem at whatever party you're at.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, if you just hit skip just before that the hook, right?
Yeah, right before the hook.
There you go. Look at that tie in there.
I see what you did there.
There you go. Yeah, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Sleeves up my trick. But yeah, that it's definitely a couple of the songs that are on that list were like, yeah. But then it's funny that you were trying to describe the let's kick it, and then they didn't get what the reference was, and I knew right away exactly what it was. Again, being my age, again, grew up, was in high school when that song came out. Yes, that shows my age, how old I am. and about Vanilla Ice, and um, he you guys talked about him now building homes, right?
Yeah, man.
And
Isn't that something?
so he's actually pretty big. So I live in Palm Beach County here in South Florida, and he's actually pretty big in the community. He comes out. Usually there's a local radio station, WRMF. They do a Christmas little concert show or whatever. He's usually there. He's involved with the community, and a lot of that house building shows that he was doing was a lot of them was here in South Florida. Was doing a lot. Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
I would love to have Vanilla Ice build my home.
Like a lot of these shows that were all these home building shows, it's like, okay, who, I don't know. I sometimes say, who can afford this shit?
I'm such a sucker for all of, like, if you throw on HGTV at my house, you might as well just scrap the afternoon. I'm not moving. I love them all, man.
I know. Well, that's it. They've got some good hooks to keep you attached in the episode, right? Yeah. I mean, you watch an episode or you switch over to the Food Network in the episode Chopped, right? All right, we're going to tell you who's going to get kicked off the show. But wait, find out next on the commercials. Now you got to stick around for commercials, right? Yeah.
I'm such a sponge too. Like, if I'm sitting there and I'm watching home improvement shows all afternoon, by the end of the afternoon, I'm speaking like a contractor. I'm like, yo, they're not going to be able to put in this floor plan with that open ceiling like that. They got to find a better beam. It's just, I'm such a sponge for all of that just horrible TV.
So do you go to Home Depot and know what you're talking about, or they look at you like, this guy just heard a few words on TV?
I can stumble around to Home Depot. I can get through, but eventually somebody's going to come up and say, "Sir, you're going to have to leave. You can't just go around helping everybody."
You're not wearing an orange vest, so you're not allowed to give tips to people. So oh, that's too funny. Yeah, I think it's really keep it going. I think because as you said, right, is with the previous podcast you were starting, it's kind of hard to keep the interest. It's hard to kind of keep others that are involved. It is very time consuming, as you mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. Podcasts are not easy, and a lot of people think that at first, and then I don't know if this is still the number or the right stat, but what I've read is most podcasts don't make it past the 8th episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, shit, this is work. This is some effort to it, right? And then what is you gaining from it too? Okay, maybe it is fun, but then it's all a matter of what you want out of it. are you? Is this just kind of fun? Do you hope to, like everybody, or not? I don't say everybody, but to be a Joe Rogan at some point, or or at least make a little money of it, or quit your day job, or what?
So my goal is to interview the band AJR.
Okay.
At the end of the show's life, we will have interviewed the band AJR. I'll have had an hour of their time, and then from that day forward, I'll probably never do another episode.
Oh, you want to drop it?
So, realistically, what I hope to gain and what my sister hopes to gain is just getting to talk to interesting people in the music industry. Getting to talk to bands that we've just loved and have listened to all of our lives, getting to meet new, interesting people like you and sit down and have good, valuable conversations and spread a little positivity.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, it's not a money driver. It's just passion. If we make a little money doing it, all of my money's going right back in. My little sister doesn't have a job. She's going to college. So if she makes a little bit of money, she'll probably pocket it. That's how she is. But it's just fun, man. We're just having a great time.
Yeah, you're right. And like I said, it's kind of cool to build. For at least sometimes when you're a head down on something, and if you don't lift up your head and kind of appreciate some things, and like we were talking earlier about, I've gone back recently and listened to the previous podcast episode there with Renee, episode 104, and he was the
Mhm.
second guest. And when I was still trying to figure stuff out, I mean, it was, and I went back and listened to the episode the other day. I'm like, wow, the show has evolved, right? And it's
Yeah.
changed and it's grown, and and again, so I appreciate everyone who listens, who's kind of getting it, and who listens every week, and
Mhm.
or who stumbles across it, and and yeah, likewise, is you find some interesting people, and what's your story, uh, and then it becomes, for me, I look at everybody, I call everybody, and once they've gone on the show, an alum, to be able to connect other guests with others. Hell, if you need somebody to put drum tracks, obviously I know
Mhm.
quite a few drummers who would probably be interested in collaborating, or
Right.
other rum distillers or rum companies that I have on, and connecting with them with other people or so forth. So it's kind of a cool, some of that realization now. It's like, I feel like very cool to be part of this hub of as eclectic of things as drums and rums, where people don't kind of get it, but then
Mhm.
like it's a name, it's used as as the hook to have the guest that's at least something related to the two things, and I don't know, yeah. So it's yeah, sure. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind quit my day job, but um that's I'm not nowhere near that yet. So
Well, and again, to kind of cross paths of my songwriting career and doing this podcast. When I write a song, I always write from the heart. I write from a true story in my life. When I do the podcast, I'm doing it from true events that are going on in my life, and that comedic element is there, but it's all my way of expressing myself. So to me, when I write a song, I've always said, if I can write a song that somebody can listen to at a show and come up to me after and say, wow, that impacted me so much. That means so much to me. Your words mean so much to me. That is when I know I've done my duty. Same thing with the show. Like if a fan of the show reaches out and says, hey man, I listen every week, and like you guys help me through my work week every week. Like that's what we're looking for. We want to make an impact. We want to help somebody smile for the day. So
yeah, no, yeah, in the world of unfortunate, a lot of negativity, and just kind of the news is just so. I get it's important to be part of what things are going on, but at the same time, when it's just barrage of 24/7
yeah.
news cycles
Yep.
and things, it's like that's why I've just like I'm sure I could do a podcast that's controversial, edgy, pushing things, and I was like, no, I just don't feel like that. That's something I want to be about, right? Um, yeah, again, when you're drinking, that's what it's supposed to be about. It's a social thing,
Yeah.
and you're having a good time, enjoying good company and conversation, and yeah, I mean, unless you drink too much and you're that, you become that angry drunk, then then we're gonna have to call the bouncer and throw you out of the podcast. So, but speaking of that, because what we're gonna come up into here is I'm gonna put you through. Obviously, you've listened to the podcast here,
Mhm.
is part of that rapid fire segment there. But before we go ahead and jump into it, so since we haven't really talked a whole lot about drums or rums yet, I'm actually gonna have some rum. I know it's a little early here. We're taping; it's not noon yet, but you know what? They say that there's you don't have to wait till 5 o'clock, or is it 5 o'clock somewhere, because you can drink all
It's
day.
always 5 o'clock somewhere,
If
man.
you're a pirate, you can drink all day long. Okay, so. All right, so I'm gonna have some rum here that's actually not too far from you. So it's actually it's Carolina, North Carolina.
Ooh.
So this is Instill Distilling. There, I don't know if you see. There you go. That's the bottle there. So that is good friends of ours. We might actually try to make a trip up there to see them, and also stop at another distillery up there in Outer Banks, Kill Devil Rum. So, all right, so we're going to go through, and you said that you are ready for this rapid fire segment there.
I'm ready, man. Let's do it.
All right, so I know since you are not a drummer, but you play guitar, so hopefully you know how to keep your time, right? When you don't have a drummer trying to keep you in line, right? And most guitarists don't, you know, So this is why I'm going to let you give you the old metronome here, right?
In 4 beats or less.
All right, so we're going to go through here, Harley. As you know, you said you've listened to the podcast, so you know what's coming up, and you're going to go through. We've got a rapid fire segment here. We're going to put you through, ask you some questions. Don't overthink it, and so forth. So, in our first question, in 4 beats or less, who's on your Mount Rushmore of drummers? I know you're not a drummer now, and I know you in the questionnaire you did give me a drummer, so at least I'll take one. But I'm sure you've known quite a few drummers, familiar with them.
Yeah, I have. I mean, Mount Rushmore of drummers. You got Neil Peart, Danny Carey. There's a couple of local drummers. A guy named Ray Splatz, I believe is his last name, and then a guy named Matt Speziale.
Okay, nice. A shout out for local drummers. Very nice. All right. So as we go through here, so in 4 beats or less, number 2. As a songwriter, what's the one song you wish you wrote?
Oh, this is an easy one, man. Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd.
Oh, okay. I normally ask the question too, is like if you're on an island, and what was the one song? Would that be the same?
No, if I was on an island and I needed one song to get me through, I would have to say the song Where on These Bones by the Ohio Weather Band.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that band. We may have to talk.
Oh, they're amazing,
Okay.
man. You'll love them.
Okay. All right. So in 4 beats or less, number 3. Which deceased musician would you want on your podcast if you had a Ouija board? But listen.
This is the hardest one.
You could take that show idea too. Okay, if you guys want to sit around a Ouija board and try to conjure up Jimi Hendrix, yeah.
If I had to pick one, man, it would be Prince.
Oh, okay.
Just an all around amazing musician.
All right. So, would you settle for damn, what the hell's the commercial now? The what's the root beer commercial? Little Prince, little fake Prince. No,
I don't think so.
I'm totally drawing a blank on what commercial that's for now. I know it's a soda, a soft drink commercial. All right. So in 4 beats or less, number 4, what podcast or podcaster do you use for inspiration? I know you kind of mentioned a show on XM, but
so
besides me, okay.
I don't know if your audience would agree or not, but there's a great show called the SDR Show with host Ralph Sutton. It's called the Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll Show. They interview a lot of great musicians, and it's a very, very fun show. Okay, so that's my inspiration.
Okay. So that's just available on everywhere else where podcasts are available.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. It's available everywhere, and they do YouTube as well.
Oh, okay, so. Cool. That's Sex, Drugs, and that's probably pretty easy to remember. SDR. Okay.
SDR Show, man.
So, all right. Well, you made it through. The rapid fire. That was pretty painless, right? Yeah, that wasn't too bad, right?
I only got a couple of scratches and burns from getting too excited over here. So,
all right. And I'm bumping my damn big ass hat in the microphone. Boom. So, all right. So now that you've made it through the podcast, you've now become, and you've had a little bit of pain and suffering. You've now become part of the alum here. So, welcome to the Drums and Rums alum, Harley. There.
Oh, hell yeah!
There you go. So rep the shirt there. We'll send this out to you. We'll get your address and send it out to you there. Maybe we'll throw a couple extra shirts in there for you and the crew there. But you definitely. So, but you're working on. You said you're working on doing some video also too for the show.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. That it's. I know I'm trying. That was one of my big New Year's goals this year was to get really good. I pretty much high 90% record everything. I'm just unfortunately not been very good about staying on top of turning the video around. And again, I said it does take time, computing cycles to crank some of the stuff out. So, and I don't do it live because I just have feel like bad luck with technology and the internet too. So, and again, when you're by yourself, you're usually the guy running around. You're the producer, the host, the tech support guy, and everything. So, and
You're
also
right.
bartender too, right? So I'm my own bartender, right? So I have to make my own damn drinks, and so maybe one day I'll be able to have afford a staff that can help do some of these things. So, oh, that's too funny. So, so in closing, Harley, I mean, what do you got? Anything want to make sure that folks are checking out? Recommend promotions. Here's the big, as we said, the big plug. Shameless plugs, and where can we listen to Hook and Bridge, or what do you want to make sure, or what else do you want to make sure you get out there that you want folks to know about?
So there's one thing that we do on every show, and that's our question of the week. So I wanted to ask you a question and see if you know the answer, and then I can tell you where we can listen to the show. We have 3 categories: 80s, pop, and soundtrack. You seem like an 80s guy to me.
Is that like are you calling me old? Is that
no? But based off of your taste in music and the amazing dad attire, you seem like an 80s guy.
Is that you getting the reference to my Primus shirt here, right?
So this question goes out to you, Paul. Which band did Morrissey front until 1987?
The Smiths.
There it is, man. The Smiths. So we do that question of the week every week. You can find that on our Instagram. Our Instagram is Hook and Bridge Podcast. You can listen to our show on Spotify and Amazon Music. Check out the YouTube. I post YouTube shorts there every week. Just little small sound bits of different funny aspects of the show or informative pieces. You can find us on, I think we're on Twitter or going to be on Twitter. I don't know. Taylor takes care of that stuff. So for now, YouTube and Instagram is Hook and Bridge Podcast, and then the Hook and Bridge Podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Buzzsprout. Sure. Shout out to Buzzsprout, man. Like, couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, let's give them a shout out there. There you go.
Oh, I love that. I got to get me one of those, man.
Yeah, no, Buzzsprout's been really good. I've been with it from the beginning, and I read a lot of folks that talk about in other podcast groups that it's not the Buzzsprout, obviously, Facebook group, but talk about whether they're using other hosting platforms and other benefits. And so far it's served me well. It's done. I did I think more, and once I got a little bit further into it, was upgraded the plan, and so forth. But I know there's other venues. I've always gone back and forth. Like the Zoom here, do I keep doing Zoom? I know there's other software and other companies that do the video capturing, or like this. And I think that they've done real well, and they try to at least kind of engage and support, right? Because that's the one thing I'm surprised that they haven't. Is and I guess it's hard to, as a hosting company, whether they're creating their own. What I would like them to do is, do a little bit more featuring of some of their, and again, I'm sure they have a shit ton of companies, right? But how do they feature and fairly feature to give the opportunity for folks to kind of check it out? Because like you said, there's a lot of podcasts out there, and you got to just try to be able to, get folks to know and learn about it and sharing things like this, right? You come on other podcasts and vice versa, is the other people learn about, your shows, and it's a lot out there. But like we said, the internet does become an equalizer it gives you the opportunity and the platform, but you've got to do the work for it. If you right. It's the one thing I don't do, and I need to really look into it, is those clips that you do. I know.
Oh, they're so great, man.
So yeah, I haven't quite, maybe gotten, have hit why or how you leverage it, use it, etc. But I know there's some good things that, I don't know. Maybe I'll have to talk to you offline about some of that. Look at it, because like I said, I know I'm not doing that. So.
And I just did the Buzzsprout ads program, and that's kind of like I said, that's where I found you. You guys picked up our ad. So I just got on your website and was like, I'm just going to reach out. See.
Yeah.
Let's that in itself is such a huge thing that I think Buzzsprout is leveraging well, that those ads doubled our listeners and put us into audiences that want to listen to our show as well. So
excellent. No,
yeah.
I think that's a great way. A lot of cross promoting and folks to learn about other ones are definitely is a huge thing. And like I said, I try to tell other folks that are doing podcasts that, look, get on other shows, if you want to grow the network. And now some maybe a little bit more focused on the video aspect. And even though I there's a few that I tried that do solely just a YouTube thing, whatever it may be, but they're consistent and weekly. I said, rip the audio and turn it into just an audio format of the show, because it's because I said not everybody can watch YouTube, whether they're at work or driving, but it's something that you can listen to in the car, and you're not killing your bandwidth on your cell phone by eating up and watching video, listening.
Yeah.
Really what you're doing is you're listening to YouTube at that point.
Yeah. Right.
So, but there's some that I haven't quite, I guess, it hasn't clicked for them because maybe they don't think. I said, look, it's a free thing. It's just, I don't know. I don't want to get too much off on a tangent there. So, but I'm glad that we've been able to connect, and we'll definitely let's stay in touch. And if there's other things you guys want to collab on or bounce off me, or definitely part of the alum, or if there's some other guest that you see that I've had on, I definitely have no problem making the reaching out to them, asking if they have an interest in coming on your show. And actually, your question there is about the Morrissey question is, I'm going to be really bad about it. I can't remember the number now. Is we had Reese Bridges on, I think it was the end of 2020 or early 2021, and he was in the band. I don't recall exactly the period of time, but he was in the band Dirty Vegas. And they had the song Days Go By, right? That was their big hit. So he was in the band there and so forth. He was the drummer. But he lives here in South Florida, is I think they've been around for like over 10 years doing this. They're in a Smith Morrissey's tribute band.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, I mean, and they're, like I said, if you're a huge Smith and Morrissey fan and all that, then these guys are to the T. Yeah, they're legit. So, to definitely check that out. That's why I'm like, I know, grew up in the 80s and wasn't probably a whole lot into that style of music, but I knew who, the Morrissey was and the Smiths and so forth, and those guys and that type of genre.
Legend, man.
Oh yeah.
Guitar legend.
Oh yeah. The music. Yeah. Very, very much like, I know maybe this might be a reach, but very much like a Pink Floyd-y kind of soundish kind of thing, and of course, I'm sure they were very influenced. Everyone is influenced by everybody, in some sort of way.
Yeah, right.
So, but very cool, very cool. I'd like to thank Harley for coming on the podcast and talking about his podcast, Hook and Bridge. So check it out there. As he mentioned, it's available on Spotify and many other locations there. So also check out the Drums and Rums podcast. Give us a like and follow, subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff, because that stuff does matter. The reviews do, because people do look at it, and that's how it kind of drives some of that. So if you're listening to the podcast, if you're listening on Apple, just go down there, click rate, type a little review there, because it does make a difference. Lots of other great episodes that are out there too. So follow us on the Facebook and Instagram, the YouTube page. So we do have stuff out there. The website, drumsandrums.com. And again, thank you all. Have a great day. This is Paul with the Backbeats and Spirits. Thank you again, Harley, for coming on there. So have a great day. Definitely just check out the Hook and Bridge podcast. Have a great day, y'all.
Awesome. Yep. Thank you.
If you like what we're doing here at Drums and Rums, we have a Patreon link to help with setting up interviews and creating content that you find entertaining and interesting. Also, if you'd like to sponsor, advertise on the podcast, or if you want to come on as a guest to promote something related to the show, email me at info@drumsandrums.com. Lastly, I want to thank Brad Brock tune titled Once Upon a Bottle of Rum, and check out his podcast, Jams and Cocktails. Thanks again for listening, where the backbeats meet the spirits.